Namaste children, very warm greetings for the new year. We're going to be starting this crash course that I told you about, different course subjects, and in that we're going to tell you how to remember, how to enhance your memory, how to boost your memory. If you haven't seen my shorts about how to crack the code for NEET 2026 using basically your memory trick, please see that short. And then we are going to continue this particular chapter, and today we're going to be revising locomotion and movement. Locomotion and movement we're going to be doing very rapidly. First part is, as a revision, you're going to be doing 25 questions. These questions are going to be from NEET prep. They're going to be different questions from different chapters, different books, different kind of material, so that you get a holistic understanding. So from NEET prep, and these questions are all tough questions. Some of these questions are similar to the NEET 2025 chapter, very similar type of those kinds of long questions. So let's see some of them. The first question straight away is about red muscle fibers when compared to the white muscle fibers have a higher. So he's asking red has more compared to the white. What? Number of mitochondria, number of blood capillaries, myoglobin content. Okay, you can have more than one part of it correct. So you know that there are red muscle fibers and white muscle fibers. Red muscle fibers are red because of more amount of myoglobin. Obviously, they are also red because they have more mitochondria, and obviously they are red means there is more amount of blood supply. So here all three are therefore correct. Right? So therefore the answer should be 1, 2 and 3 are correct. Let's look at it. Yes, number 4, that is 1, 2 and 3 are correct. There is another important aspect here that you want to know about the red fibers. Are these red fibers, though they have more amount of mitochondria, oxygen as well as blood capillaries, important part about it is it depends therefore on aerobic circulation, and so therefore they cannot act very fast. They are the slow twitch muscles. These muscles are like the skeletal muscles, and they are slow twitch muscles, and they have less amount of calcium compared to the fast twitch muscles. The white muscles are actually the fast twitch muscles. The white muscles are those which act anaerobically itself, and so therefore within a shorter duration they will be continuously acting. And so therefore these muscles are the fast twitch muscles like those of the eye muscles. The eye muscles, which is the ciliary muscles, the ciliary pupillary muscles, these muscles are the fast twitch muscles or the white fibers, and they are the fast twitch fibers. So remember, red is slow twitch whereas white is fast twitch. Another important part which you got an additional point there. The next question is again about the red muscles and the white muscles. Look at it. The red muscle fibers are adapted to sudden outburst of muscular activity. So is it true? Red muscles are extremely rich in sarcoplasmic reticulum. Correct? So remember here that the red muscles are adapted for sudden outburst. We said what are they, red muscles? Slow twitch fibers. So therefore not adapted for fast muscular activity. Fast muscular activity here is for white muscles, whereas red muscles are extremely rich in sarcoplasmic reticulum. Also wrong. They have to be less in sarcoplasmic reticulum. The calcium content has to be less because they are slow twitch. The white muscles are rich in sarcoplasmic reticulum. So here both of them are false. A is false, R is also false. Correct? The answer is 4. Right? Good. We go to the next question. A motor neuron along with the muscle fibers is connected to it constitute what? When there is a motor neuron, a neuron that comes out and that is connected with the muscle fiber or more number of muscle fibers that it innervates. All the muscle fibers that a motor neuron innervates and the nerve together is called as the motor unit. It is not the neuromuscular junction. The end of the neuron to the muscle is called the neuromuscular junction, but the nerve, the endings and the muscle fiber together becomes a motor unit. All the muscles together form a syncytium and number of muscle fibers together is a fascicle. So therefore remember the definitions of each one of this. This basically constitutes a motor unit, right? So the second one is the answer, right? A protein complex responsible for automatic resetting of the myosin heads, breaking of the cross bridge during muscle contraction involves ATP binding to. You remember what is the steps of the muscle contraction, and that he is telling you the breaking of the cross bridge, which means it is a part of the relaxation of the myosin. So the myosin and the actin are binded, and now the myosin has to detach. How does it detach? The process of detaching of the actin from the myosin is because of binding of ATP to the myosin head. It binds to the myosin head. The myosin head, you know, is like a snake. On the top of it basically have the actin binding site and the ATP binding site. So when the ATP binds to the myosin head or the globular head, automatically ATP gets converted to ADP, and that basically creates an energy which allows the breaking of the cross bridge. So the power stroke is over, and then the breaking of the cross bridge is done, and that happens because of ATP binding to the myosin head directly. So the answer is 2, right? So don't confuse it with other things such as tropomyosin, etc. Good. We go to the next question. What are the sequential steps in the formation and breakage of the cross bridge in muscle contraction? Same thing, same question, similar type of question here. Again, same thing is asking you what is the sequential step. What are the sequential steps for the muscle contraction itself? See, initially, the actin and myosin are always there. The actin filaments and the myosin filaments are there. Correct? What is it that is blocking the myosin, preventing the actin from attaching to the myosin? The troponin and tropomyosin. Tropomyosin attaches itself to the actin binding sites where the cross bridges have to be formed. So the troponin and the tropomyosin complexes attach itself to the actins where the tropomyosin binding sites are present. So they are covering the actin. Once the troponin C, that is calcium channels, are present, troponin C is the actin which binds to the calcium, and that then releases the tropomyosin from the actin binding site. So the tropomyosin is then released from the actin. Now the actin sites which are actually open for myosin gets released, and so now the myosin immediately attaches. After the myosin attaches, he is asking you what is happening. Myosin attaches. After the myosin attaches, obviously what is going to happen? It is going to, myosin is like a head. There is neither a change in the length of the actin nor a change in the myosin. There is only a movement of the actin further because of the power stroke. The myosin head moves forward. When it moves forward, it stretches the actin further. So there is a stretching of the actin on both sides. There is a shortening of the sarcomere. Neither does the actin length nor is the myosin length changing, but there is a sliding of actin over myosin. So this is called the sliding method or the walk along technique. It is called the walk along technique or the sliding technique, where the actin slides over the myosin during a power stroke, and that creates a contraction. Right? So the Z lines becomes narrower. Understood that? And once that happens, after that immediately ATP binds to the myosin, then releases the actin binding site. The cross bridges is released. Again it gets open. It goes and binds to another site, and then the power stroke continues. So therefore the process is 4, that is myosin attaches to the actin, performs a power stroke, binds to ATP, and then detaches from the actin. So the answer is number 4. Correct? So we have explained the whole sequence of events. Remember this very thoroughly. True? Good. Calcium released into the sarcoplasm during muscle contraction. We know that calcium gets released into the sarcoplasm, and that comes from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and these come through certain tubules which are called as the T tubules. Okay, and because of that, what is happening? It allows to remove the tropomyosin block. What does the calcium do? It releases the tropomyosin block. So there is a tropomyosin block. The first pathway is calcium. Calcium release causes the tropomyosin, releases a tropomyosin which is blocking over the actin binding sites, and then myosin attaches to the actin through the cross bridges. So the answer is remove the tropomyosin block. Don't get confused with release of acetylcholine or anything else. Right. What is the motor unit? Again, he has already told you this before. So it is one motor neuron, and then is it one skeletal muscle or all skeletal muscles innervated by the nerve axon terminals? Is it a motor neuron and all the skeletal muscles, or all motor neurons and all the skeletal muscles? Is it a motor neuron and one skeletal muscle? Is it a motor neuron and a sensory neuron? No, certainly no. It is one single motor neuron with the axons, and if the axons are innervating more than one muscle, then all those muscles which are innervated by one nerve is called as a motor unit. So the answer is A. Okay, another important point to remember. Okay, now we comes to the process called as a G-actin and F-actin. Read this very clearly. Each G globular actin is a polymer of monomeric F-actin. Globular actin are small globules, and F-actin is what? Filamentous actin. F means filamentous actin. Is globular a polymer of F-actin, or is F-actin a polymer of G-actin? Simple. Remember, these are multiple globules, round, 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 round. Multiple rounds when you join, you get a line, you get a thread, like a chain. Actin is like a chain. Remember this, okay? See, our memory booster. People get confused very much in G-actin and F-actin. How are we going to do that? Memory booster. I told you this memory trick. There are certain memory tricks and synaptic junctions in your brain which are going to accelerate. And that is what we are going to bring about here. How to remember. How is it that you basically grew and remember these things in the right manner? Correct? So this is what it is. How do you remember that G globular protein and F-actin? What is what? What is polymer? What is monomer? How do you remember? Each globular protein is like a chain in a necklace. The necklace is your F-actin, which is a complete filament, right? Understand that? The necklace is your filament. So F-actin is a polymer of multiple G-actin. He has given here G-actin is a polymer of monomeric F-actin. No, monomeric is G-actin, polymeric is F-actin. So this is wrong. It is the reverse. Second statement, the globular head is an active ATPase enzyme and has binding sites for ATP and active sites for actin. The globular head is an active ATPase enzyme and has binding sites for the ATP and the active sites of actin. Yes, the globular head has a ATP actin binding site as well as a ATP binding site. Correct? So the second statement is correct, whereas the first one is incorrect. The answer is 3. Right? You got it. So first we had marked it as 1, which is wrong, with 3 is the right one. Correct? So very nicely we have explained it in the whole way. We go to the next question. Basically, let us look at this question. Consider the statements given below and choose the correct statement, true and false. Locomotion, changes of body postures and heat production are some of the functions of the skeletal muscle. You know it is a skeletal muscle, so as it works, more amount of heat is going to be produced. When you contract the skeletal muscle, you can bend your head, you can lift your head, so your posture can change, right? It also helps in movement. So all these are correct. Actin filaments are firmly attached to the Z line. You have 2 Z lines on either side, and there the actin filaments are attached. A to Z. So how do you remember this? Remember that muscle fiber has A to Z. That means actin attaching to the Z line. Actin attaching to the Z line. A to Z. Simple, right? See how we got that memory booster? A to Z. The portion of myofibril between non-consecutive Z line is a sarcomere. What is a sarcomere? The portion which lies from one Z line to the another. So it has to be consecutive Z line. From that to the next, another sarcomere. So therefore each sarcomere is what? Between one Z line to another to another. So therefore between consecutive Z line is a sarcomere. It is not non-consecutive. So C is false. Muscle constitute more than 50% of the body weight in a human adult. Is it right? Is muscles more than 50% of the body weight? Remember, it is 40 to 50%. It is not more than 50. It is little bit less than 50. It is 40 to 50% of the muscle weight. And so therefore D is also false. So remember that muscles is 40 to 50%. How do you remember that? Basically, simple. Muscle M has how many limbs? One straight limb, down limb, next limb, next limb. How many limbs it has? 4. Okay, M stands for 4 strikes. So therefore, it is 40 to 50%. So some way by which you're going to recollect. Oh, I remembered it this way. Between 40 to 50 because it has 4 arms. So therefore, you remember it as muscle stands for M, which has 4 lines, and so therefore 40 to 50%. Beautiful, you're never going to forget this again, right? So remember that C and D here are false, A and B are right. So A and B are right, which means this is 2TTFF, so answer is 3. Good. See, these are all longer questions which are there. Let's look at the next question about the H zone. Where is the H zone in the skeletal muscle? Simple. The central gap between the myosin filaments in the A band. The myosin stands for which band? The anisotropic band. The actin stands for the isotropic band. A stands for the isotropic, same color. Myosin stands for the anisotropic band. The central gap between the actin filaments, is there a gap in the myosin filament? Is there a break in the myosin? There is no break in the myosin filament. It is in the center of the myosin filament, but this particular place which is there, it is a gap between the actin filaments. The actin filaments are on either side of the Z band, along the Z band. In between there is a gap where the myosin filaments are present. So this H band is basically a band which lies between the edges of the actin filaments. So it is a central gap of the actin filaments through which the myosin filaments are present. And that H band central line is central part of the H zone is basically your M line. So that is called the central gap. So the answer is B. Right. The total number of bones in the skeletal of girdles in human adults. So girdles, he is talking about the number of girdles. What are the girdles? You have the pelvic girdle and the pectoral girdle. The pectoral girdle is what? Your shoulder girdle. Correct? So the shoulder girdle is made up of what bones? The arm is the appendigeal skeletal system, whereas the central body is the axial skeletal system. So the girdle is present in the axial skeletal system. So don't consider any bones of the arm. The arm is to be removed. Then what is left out? The pectoral girdle. The pectoral girdle consists of mainly what? The 2 bones. Back is the shoulder bone and the clavicle. Right? So how many bones are there? Clavicle and shoulder. 2 bones here, 2 bones here. So 4 bones. Now, then what happens? The pelvic girdle. Pelvic girdle is made up of what bones? You know it has got the ilium, ischium and the pubis together become one coxal bone. Though you have 3 bones, ilium, ischium and pubis, they are not separated by any attachment. They are fused together to one single bone called the coxal bone. So you have one coxal bone on the left, one coxal bone on the right, and these 2 are attached together with the sacrum at the back. So therefore, it is only the coxal bones, okay, together become one girdle. The sacrum is not part of the girdle, it's a part of the axial skeletal system. So therefore, only the 2 coxal bones are the part of the girdle. So 2 plus 4 becomes 6. So totally answer should be 3, that is 6, right? Good. Which statement is true regarding the types of ribs in humans? All ribs are connected directly to the sternum. Is it right? No. You know that there are false ribs. There are also floating ribs. True ribs connect directly to the sternum via their own costal cartilage, whereas false ribs share cartilages. Yes, the false ribs share the cartilages such that they then attach to the 7th rib. Right? All ribs are termed false ribs because they do not attach to the sternum. Wrong. Floating ribs are attached to the vertebral column only and do not have any cartilage. Yes, they are attached, floating ribs are attached only to the vertebrae, they are not attached to any of the sternum. But do they not have any cartilage? Wrong, they have cartilage. So floating ribs are attached only to the vertebral column, but they have cartilage. So that is also false. So what is right? Only that the second one, true ribs connect directly to the sternum through their costal cartilage, whereas the false rib share the cartilages. So the second one is right. Good. So this way they confuse you, right? Let's look at again a muscle question. A single filament of tropomyosin runs close to the F-actin throughout its length. So what is a single filament of tropomyosin? Runs close to the F-actins throughout its length. So you have the filamentous actin. Along the filamentous actin, how many parts of tropomyosin you get? How many filament of tropomyosin do you have? Remember, for one filament of actin, you have two filaments of tropomyosin. You have a two filament of tropomyosin. It's like a double rubber band. Okay, so tropomyosin is a double rubber band. So remember that way, a single filament of F-actin is supported by two tropomyosin filaments. So there is not a single filament of tropomyosin, but two filaments of tropomyosin. So the first one is wrong. In the resting state, the subunit of troponin masks the active binding site for myosin on the actin filaments. Yes, troponin T attaches to the tropomyosin and blocks the myosin binding site. So that is the correct statement. So second is correct, first is incorrect, which means the third is the correct answer, right? We got it right. Perfect. Electrical excitability is a property of nervous tissue and not of muscular tissue. Doesn't muscle get excited? Do they don't generate muscle potential? Cardiac muscle has its own excitatory ability because of the SA node, isn't it? So electrical excitability is a property of both nervous and muscular tissue. You cannot say muscular tissue doesn't have excitability. The ability to respond to internal and external stimuli is lacking in muscular tissue. Again wrong. Because of internal stimuli, because of external stimuli, it can get activated, and so therefore if you touch heat, automatically the muscles tends to undergo excitability, contract and pull your hand away. So that is why there is a ability to respond to an internal as well as an external stimuli in muscular tissue. Both are wrong here. Both the statements are possible. That means electrical excitability is a property of both, and the muscular tissue can respond to external and internal stimuli. Right, so both A and R are false. See, we had got that wrong earlier, we got it right now. Good. A motor neuron along with muscle fibers connected to it constitutes we read this earlier, it is the motor unit. It is not motor end plate, but the motor unit. Correct? You got that right. Okay, select the incorrect statement from these three. Okay, one of them is wrong. Okay, simple. Ear ossicles, we know that directly. Malleus, incus and stapes, that is a correct statement. Then, actin, myosin, troponin are muscle protein. Right, now we are left out with two. Skull bones. Zygomatic bone is the side bone. Sphenoid bone at the base of the skull. And the skull as such consists of frontal bone, parietal bone and the hyoid. Hyoid is the bone here. Okay, is it a part of the skull? How can it be? Skull is here, but is that a constitute part of the skull? Doesn't look like. But look at the next statement. Ilium, ischium, pubis, they are all form part of the coxal bone. Yes, but look at that. Ilium, what is the spelling of ilium? I-L-I-U-M. The bone is I-L-I-U-M. Here it is given I-L-E-U-M. Ilium, not ilium, not ilium, but ilium. That is I-L-E-U-M. What is ilium? Ilium is a part of the small intestine. The first part of the small intestine is called ilium, right? So therefore, ilium jejunum, okay, are parts of the small intestine, and so therefore ilium is not the right answer. It is I-L-I-U-M should be the answer. So the first one is wrong. Okay, remember that hyoid, though it's a bone present in your neck, it is a part of the skull bone. Hyoid is also a part of the skull bone. Remember hyoid, hyoid, it is present right here. The Adam's apple bone is a part of the skull bone. Okay, good. How do you remember it? Your neck is what is a part of the skull. Correct. Consider these two statements. First 7 pairs of the ribs are called true ribs and are attached to the thoracic vertebrae. The first 7 pairs of the ribs are called true ribs and are attached to the thoracic vertebrae and really connected to the sternum with the help of elastic cartilage. Is it attached with the help of elastic cartilage? What is the type of cartilage that is attaching the ribs to the sternum? It is hyaline cartilage, but it is attached, the first 7 is attached and it is attached by the hyaline cartilage. The 8th, 9th and 10th are false ribs and they join together to attach to the 7th rib, again correct, but with the help of again hyaline cartilage. In both the statements, remember it is hyaline cartilage and not elastic cartilage, right? So the 4th one is the answer. Right, let's go ahead and do the remaining questions. Okay, good. Fine, let's try to do it. We have finished 25 minutes. Okay, we've taken a little more, but in explanation, otherwise we could have done it faster. The pubic symphysis of the pelvic girdle is structurally significant because it contains the pubic symphysis is basically the 2 pubic bones in the front is actually joined together to call the pubic symphysis. But what is it? Is it a fibrous cartilage or is a fibrous connective tissue? Does it have total immobility or is there some mobility? There is some mobility. The coxal bones can expand. During pregnancy especially, what hormone acts on the pubic symphysis? Oxytocin. It creates a relaxation of the sphincter of this fibrous joint and therefore enlarges the pubic to allow more space for the pelvic girdle so that the baby can come out, right? So therefore pubic symphysis is a bone where there is slight movement, there is an expansion of the ligament, and so therefore it is a fibrous cartilage, it is not a fibrous connective tissue. So answer is first one, contains fibrous cartilage and there is slight movement. Remember, it also responds to oxytocin and expands. So the first one is the right answer. Good. Which are this type of joint? Pollen socket between humerus and pectoral girdle? Correct. Hinge joint, knee joint? Yes, that is also correct. Pivot joint between atlas and the occipital bone. Occipital bone means which part of the skull? Is that a pivot joint? Pivot joint occurs between the atlas and the axis. The axis is round and the atlas passes through it basically. So the atlas is the atlas is round and the axis passes through it. So the atlas and the axis form the pivot joint. It is not between atlas and the occipital bone. So the third one is wrong. Gliding joint between the carpals? Yes, this is a gliding joint. Saddle joint between the carpal and the metacarpal of the thumb. Saddle joint between the carpal and the metacarpal. Carpal to metacarpal is a saddle joint. Right. So, how many of these pairs are correctly matched? All of 1, 2, 3, 4 are correctly matched except the pivot joint. So, 4 is the correct one, third one, 4 is correct. So, there are 4 of them are correct here. Correct. Good. So remember, carpal is gliding, whereas metacarpal to carpal is saddle. Okay, so gliding and then saddle. Good. Select the correct statement with respect to diseases of the muscles. Failure of neuromuscular transmission in myasthenia gravis is what? Because of myasthenia gravis, because of delayed neuromuscular junction. That causes difficulty in breathing, difficulty in swallowing and slow actions. So can prevents normal swallowing, which is right. Correct. Accumulation of urea and creatinine in joints causes inflammation. Why do you get inflammation of joints? Due to accumulation of what chemical? Not urea and creatinine. Urea and creatinine are secreted by the kidneys, right? It is uric acid. It is not urea and creatinine. An overdose of vitamin D causes osteoporosis. Wrong. It is an underdosage of vitamin D causes osteoporosis. Rapid contraction in skeletal muscle causes tetany. It is not muscular dystrophy. Muscular dystrophy means lack of ability to contract because of lack of contractile proteins. So that is a hereditary condition. So whereas rapid contraction is muscular tetany. So only the first one is the right answer. Okay, good. Which of the following statements are correct regarding skeletal muscle? We'll do this last question. Muscle bundles are held together by collagenous connective tissue called fascicle. Is the whole muscle tissue which are held together by collagenous tissue called a fascicle? Sarcoplasmic reticulum of the muscle fiber is a storehouse of calcium ions. Yes, it is a storehouse of calcium ions. Striated appearance of the skeletal muscle fibers due to distribution pattern of the actin and myosin protein. That is why you get striations, correct? Because actin is present, myosin is present. So, one side actin, in the center myosin. So, you get the striated appearance. M line is considered as a functional unit of sarcomere. Wrong. It is a Z line. Okay, so the second D is wrong. And also the first one is wrong because it is the connective tissue fiber which is connecting the muscle fibers is called the perimysium. What is a fascicle? Multiple muscle fibers together is called as a fascicle, whereas the connective tissue layer is not fascicle, it is known as a perimysium. Got it? It is known as a perimysium. Each muscle fiber is connected by a endomysium. Multiple muscle fibers connected by a connective tissue called perimysium. The whole thing together is called as a fascicle. Okay, so remember that how you differentiate this. So A as well as D is a wrong statement. Okay, he is asking you which is correct, so therefore only B and C. So the third one is the right answer. Right. So with this we complete this important chapter of locomotion and movement. Let's do more questions next. We will also be discussing detailedly about locomotion, motion and movement in the next video. So remain logged in, do see the shots previously and remain connected. Let's going to be doing every day a crash course with important points, more than one videos, especially for NEET 2026. See you. Shubhratri. Shabbakai. Thank you.